On today's Community Wednesday, let's break down the Milano 821. A few of you may recall when I rated a subscriber Milano 821 build, and I was very negative towards the gun. But shortly after, it got a major buff, and suddenly everyone was using the Milano. It was one of the best sniper support weapons because it did an insane amount of damage and had great range and recoil. But as soon as the big SMG nerf that came last season, well, everyone stopped using it. So after all the changes recently, let's find out if the Milano should start being used again or if it should remain buried. In the build, we're using the agency suppressor, a Cobra red dot, steady end laser, wire stock, and the Stanag 55 round drums. This is a pretty balanced build and you can definitely change things out, like adding the task force barrel instead of the laser. But let's talk about its stats, starting with mobility. It has an ADS time of 230 milliseconds, which is actually pretty good considering it's a slow fire rate, high damage SMG. Its reload and reload add times are almost 3 seconds from empty and 2.36 if you leave one bullet in the mag, and its mag cap is 55. But because it has a slow rate of fire, you won't find yourself reloading that often. Its movement and sprint speeds are pretty good because it is a Cold War weapon, but it is not as good as those great mobility PPSH and Mag-10 builds. And its ADS strafe is 2.67 meters per second, which is pretty decent, but again, not as good as it could be. Its sprint out and tag sprint out times are still good, but on the lower end for an SMG. And its stability is at an amazing 1.5 T, which will help you in those long-range engagements. But its bullet velocity is only 444.4 meters per second, which isn't that great for long-range engagements. And its rate of fire is 9.63 rounds per second, or 578 rounds per minute, which is pretty slow. So it gets a mobility score of 39. Like I said before, its recoil would be a lot worse if its rate of fire was higher, but because it is so slow, it is extremely easy to manage, and you can use it up to 60 meters. So it gets a recoil score of 34. For its damage, it only has one drop-off point at 20 meters. In the first damage range, it has an average TTK if you're hitting upper torso, lower torso, or limb shots, but if you're hitting headshots compared to other weapons, it is not that great. Between 20 and 30 meters as well, you will be losing to pretty much everything. If you're hitting lower torso and limb shots, your TTK is almost a second, which means some assault rifles may be able to kill you twice in that time. But over 30 meters, suddenly its upper torso TTK becomes average. And for longer range weapons, an average score is actually a decent score. But its head, lower torso, and limb TTKs are still pretty bad. At any range, you will need more than one headshot to help with your TTK, so headshots aren't always the most reliable things to go for. But because it does have pretty easy recoil, it wouldn't hurt. So it gets a damage score of 33.4. And when we add up all the categories, we get a final score of 106.4. This is a pretty low score for an SMG, and it's all because of the damage. Basically, if you want to use the Milano, you need to use it between 0 and 20 meters. While you could theoretically use it past 30, you would need to guarantee that you're only getting headshots and upper torso shots. And if you're thinking maybe you want to put a longer range scope on it to achieve those headshots and upper torso shots, well, its bullet velocity will never be as good as something like the AK-74 or many of the Modern Warfare SMGs, or just literally any other assault rifle. The problem with either of these scenarios is that between 0 and 20 meters, you will be being beat by pretty much every other sniper support weapon. Weapons like the MP7 and the PPSH just have a much better TTK. And while they may not be as accurate, they are still accurate enough to cause you to flinch. And if you want to use it at longer range, well, like I said, you will be beat by most other weapons. The PPSH, for example, can spray and hit anywhere in the body and still get a better TTK than if you're only getting upper torso shots with the Milano. So the Milano just doesn't have anything that makes it stand out other than its superior recoil. But even then, if you want a more accurate weapon, there are other and better choices. Like right now, I can't think of a single reason to choose the Milano over the Cold War AK. The Milano may have a slightly faster ADS time and slightly faster mobility, but the Cold War AK gets better TTKs at every single range. Not to mention that if you use the GRU suppressor on the AK, your second damage range starts 9 meters after the Milanos. So if a battle happened between these two at 25 meters and the AK was only hitting body shots and the Milano was hitting only headshots, the AK would still win. I just can't think of a single reason to choose a Milano over most other SMGs or something like the AK. maybe they'll buff the Milano again and it'll be usable, but until then, just stay away from it. But that was a Milano. Have you used it recently? And if so, do you think it's as bad as I say? And if there's any weapon build or part of the game you want to break down, let me know and you may see it on the next Community Wednesday. So that's the video. If you enjoyed it or this helped in any way, let me know by leaving a like. If you got any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section down below. And if you want to make sure that you never miss another video, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.